What's up guys? Today I'm going to be changing my oil pump on my 1jzgte VVTi. I'm going to be putting on this modified 1jz, 2jz oil pump from Drift Motion. So as you can see, I've already removed my harmonic balancer and my front cover, as well as my timing belt. Removing the harmonic balancer is actually kind of difficult sometimes, and I have a little tip for that. So there's quite a few different ways to go about pulling the crank pulley bolt out of a 1jz, and some people like to try doing it with a breaker bar and a pipe slit over it called a cheater bar to give it more torque. Some people heat it up with a torch, some people use PB Blaster, but if you have a impact wrench, I have this Milwaukee 1/2" drive impact wrench. Usually a normal socket's not gonna work, but there's a company called Ingersoll Rand that makes this power socket, and they claim this adds 50% more torque to your impact, and this pulled it right off for me. So if anyone else is having a hard time getting that off, I definitely recommend trying this out. In addition to this, I also use a little bit of PB Blaster, and I sprayed it on like 2 or 3 days before, and then the day of, and then I hit it with this power socket and it came right off. So if anyone's struggling with that, I would definitely recommend giving this a try. So this little piece can sometimes get a little bit wedged, so you just take a flathead, just go right inside, it pops right out. So now that I've got the crank position sensor and this little retainer piece off, the crank pulley should just slide right back off here. Just be gentle with it, don't force it off. And you can see it just slid right off. So now that the crank pulley is removed, the front main seal is exposed. I'm also going to be changing that in this video, but next thing I'm going to do is actually remove the AC compressor, because I'm going to be replacing it with a new one, and it does need to come off in order to pull this off. So the AC compressor has two 14mm bolts in the front and then 2 more on the side, so I'm going to go ahead and pull those out. So now that I've got the AC compressor off, I'm going to go ahead and start pulling out all these bolts that are actually holding the pump on. As I do that, I'm just going to put them in the holes that they go in inside the new one, so I don't forget where any of them go. And also, just to be noted that there are 2 coming up from the bottom in addition to all the ones on the front. So don't forget about those. Sometimes they can get kind of gasket on them and be harder to see. So now that all the screws on the oil pump are out, I'm going to use a flathead to come along this side of the block right here and just kind of break the seal between this and the block, and eventually it'll pop off and slide off the front right here. So I got all the bolts out and I started prying this off, and it came a little bit of the ways off, and you can see it's actually wiggling and stuff. And we were able to get it about 1/3 of an inch before it just gets caught and it just won't come anymore. And so I looked at the new one, and there's actually this little ridge here that catches it on the inside of the pan under here. So I'm gonna have to flip it over, pull the whole pan off, which I already resealed. So reseal that once again, and then I'll be able to pull this off. So a little bit frustrating, but it's okay. So now I'm just getting ready to flip the engine over because I have to pull off the entire oil pan. And it's kind of frustrating because I already took that off and resealed it and everything, but gotta do what you gotta do. So all right, so now I've got the entire engine upside down. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the oil pan and the sump cover, and that's gonna allow me to actually pull the oil pump off. So for future reference, you have to pull the oil pan off to get the oil pump off of a 1jz. I didn't know that, but now I do. So I went ahead and just pulled off all the bolts holding the oil pan on, and I'm gonna go ahead and pry that off, and then remove all the ones holding the sump cover on, and then finally I'll be able to pull the old oil pump off. So now that the sump cover is off, this just slides right off. Wish I would have known that beforehand. It's these little pins that are holding it on, but yeah, for future reference, if you're trying to get your oil pump off, you've got to pull the whole oil pan assembly off. So now I'm going to replace this with the new pump and reseal all of this up. bolt it all back down, and yep. So now that I've got the old oil pump off, what I'm gonna wanna do is just go through here and clean up all this gasket. There's also two important seals that need to be replaced, right here and here, and they come in the oil seal set from Drift Motion. So yeah, I'll be replacing those as well as just getting rid of all this, getting it all cleaned up. So I actually already resealed the oil pan on this engine, but now that I'm forced to take it off again, I did notice that I didn't actually replace this oil pan O-ring right here. I'll go ahead and link this part below, but I went ahead and ordered another one of these. So I'm actually gonna leave the oil pan off of the engine while I put the new pump on so that I can change that out when it comes. All right, so now that I've got the engine flipped back over, I'm gonna get the entire surface that the oil pump rests against completely clean. For this, I'm just gonna use some paper towels and brake parts cleaner, and it should come right off. So these are the two seals that need to be replaced when the pump is being changed. And I'm gonna use this hook and pick set from Milwaukee to get these out without damaging the surfaces. So these two come with the oil seal set from Drift Motion. Yeah, they're really old. So now that both of these are out, I'm gonna give this surface one more clean, and then I'm gonna get the oil pump ready to be installed. All right, so now that this surface is completely clean, I'm gonna install the new O-rings. First, I'm gonna do the high pressure side right here. And before I install these, I'm gonna coat them in a little bit of Permatex dielectric grease. So just like this, just to get a little bit around the side, and what this does is it helps them to stay in place once they're put in. All right, so the high pressure side's in. And the low pressure side is in. So now I'm gonna get the actual new oil pump ready to go on. So the first thing to do is to install the front main seal. So for this, what I'm gonna want to do is just put a little bit of grease around this inner ring right here where it's gonna meet up with the crankshaft, but none on the outside. So this is just gonna go in right here, and I'm gonna use a hammer to tap it in flush. Now the front main seal is on the oil pump, and as you can see, it is flush with the pump all the way around. It's important to leave a little bit of gap in here between the where the crank mates up with the pump and the seal for excess oil to drain. So you don't want this seal to sit all the way down in there. You want it to just be flush with the pump and there to be a tiny bit of a gap. It's about like. So my camera died, but I went ahead and put on a layer of Permatex, the right stuff, gray gasket, just a thin layer along the inside line, and this will seal the oil pump. It's important to note not to fill up these little half circle crevices right here, only this inside line. These will actually fill up when pressure is applied. It'll seep in there and fill those up right around the high pressure and low pressure seals. So yeah, I'm gonna get ready to bolt this up to the engine. So I've got all the bolts in that hold the oil pump onto the block, and these 9 bolts are gonna be torqued down to 15 foot-pounds each. So now I've got my new oil pump installed. I put my alternator back on, and yeah, that's it. Put my crank position sensor back on, this little piece that holds this on. Yeah, so thanks for watching. I hope that helped. Next I'll be resealing my oil pan, so stay tuned for that.